Yeah, good morning, everybody. The University of Mozarteum welcomes you to this important symposium, Mikrotöne, Microtones, Small is Beautiful, in Salzburg. This project is a wonderful cooperation with the International Ecumenic Music Society and the University of Mozarteum in partnership with the Contempor and with Euro Microfest 2017. The leading team of the Mozarteum is very thankful to all persons involved in the organization of this symposium, of this conference. Many thanks to the great organizers for this symposium, Gerhard Steinkucker and Agustin Castella Avila. Also special thanks for the organizers that commemorate Rolf Mädel with a concert, with a special concert on Sunday. He was a great musician and a really very important person for us here at the Mozarteum, and in the foyer there is a video installation about Rolf Mädel. Salzburg is not only the city of Mozart, but also has a direct historical reference to contemporary music. Here in Salzburg, in a good Austrian tradition, in the Kaffeehaus, the International Society of Contemporary Music was founded in 1922. On the August 11th, many famous composers of this time, Paul Hindemith, Egon Welesch, Bela Bartok, Anton Weber, among others, met in the Café Bazaar. And a variety of projects concerning contemporary music took place here in Salzburg since that time. The Mozarteum University has been involved in many activities. As a young student, I was lucky enough to attend in the third symposium Microtones Research Music with Microtones Ecumenic Music in 1991. I was particularly fascinated by the completely new perspectives for me, which for exciting lectures for me decided. Particularly in memory were the following persons: Ezra Sims, Boston. The lecture was called "A Use of Harmonics as Horizontal and Vertical Determinants." Professor Dr. Martin Vogel from Germany. The lecture was called "Vierteltöne bei den Griechen." And Boguslav Schäfer, the lecture was called "Microtonalität, weitere Entwicklungsmöglichkeiten." I would hope that you all go with equally impressive audible experience from the symposium. We are very happy to welcome you in Salzburg and in this beautiful house. And we hope you have a successful time in Salzburg. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Agustin, for inviting me here. I try to give an overview as better as I can on microtonality, Western music tradition. So I made several touch upon different issues, different problematics connected to microtonality. As Miss, she said that I'm actually at the moment a PhD student at the Birmingham Conservatoire in England. And I'm not doing at the moment PhD research in microtonality, but I did research microtonality and artistic value on microtonality before. So, here is the content of what I would like to say very quickly today. So what is microtonal music and what is non-microtonal music? Touch upon evolution of temperaments and some pioneers of microtonal music that I guess most of you know, approaches to microtonality has been used. Some opinions that have been expressed on this issue in the history, and notational problems. And if we have got time, maybe I'll show you my short piece about microtonal piece I have composed. Right, so what is microtonal music? We may define non-microtonal music first. What is non-microtonal music first? So non-microtonal music is all the music using the 12-tone equal temperament, like everybody knows, widely used today in Western musical culture. This scale divides the octave into 12 equal parts on a logarithmic scale. I guess everybody is acquainted with this information. I guess all here are musicians, right? So all composers, so everybody knows. And microtonal music, therefore, in Western tradition is normally considered that music with intervals smaller than a semitone. This is the conception people has. Microtonal music is music with intervals smaller than a semitone. Right. Is this a new tendency in music? Well, we still tend to think, nonetheless, that microtonal music is exclusively a 20th century phenomenon, forgetting that sporadic experiments with pitches outside of the traditional 7-note diatonic and 12-note chromatic gamuts have gone on ever since the development of classic Greek music. So it's a very well-established phenomenon in the history. On the aesthetic level, the capacity of the ear is very much in question when we are assessing the impact of microtonal expression. So we hear there's something strange there we are not used to. At the same time, the very fact that minute differences in pitch can be perceived and identified by many musicians does not inevitably ensure their validity for artistic purposes. We need to find an artistic value around microtonality. It's not just about understanding there is a different tuning system. Right. I try to now to give an overview about the evolution or involution, is up to you, or the evolution of temperaments. So, the importance of temperaments in building Western musical language. Temperaments which have followed the theory and musical practice through the centuries are important factors in formalizing and build the Western musical language, which means that the development of temperaments, they have been important for the development of music itself, from monody to polyphony and accompanied monody, polymodalism to modern demodalism, of course, minor major, from late Middle Age counterpoint to harmony, has been connected to the development of temperaments. So, I propose first to identify two big groups. The one is the natural scale and the other ones, tempered scales, equal temperament, system scales. So when we talk about natural scale, is scales use just intonation, which is scales based on simple ratios. Sorry if I'm a bit technical, but I hope it's clear for everyone. I don't think it's too harsh. Right, so we have simple ratios, right? And we build up scales on simple ratios. This is natural scale. This is a big group. And the second group, we have temperaments on different levels. So, mean tone, we have different kind of mean tones. I'm not going into details, but it's modifying fifths, narrowing in order to fit a certain ratios. We have regular temperaments. Werkmeister, sorry, my bad German. Werkmeister, Kirchenberger temperaments, and Baroque temperaments. They are irregular, actually, they are not already equal temperament as we know today. Right? They are close to, but they are not like we have today. And then finally, we have equal temperament systems. And it's very interesting, circulating tunings. The circulating tuning technique, theory. So we, how in the history they have built equal temperament systems through circulating tunings, which is actually achieving the beginning, the starting note of the octave, achieving the same starting note through a subdivision of the scale. So, just mention that we do not have just 12 tone equal temperament. We have 19 tone scale, which was really popular, which is still well known in it was actually from the 16th century actually, and the 31 tone scale that had been used already before that. So we have different equal temperaments from the past. Right. Sorry, I'm a bit quick because we have little time. I hope it's not confusing. Right, so. Okay, now? Yeah, I know it's better. Okay, so. If we think about natural scale, right, the simple ratios, scales built on simple ratios, like Pythagorean scale, like Ptolemaic sequence, Zarlinian scale, these kind of scales, which are based on natural harmonics. These have different opinions in applying when they apply to microtonal microtonal practice today. Against this, the use of this scale. Has been said that the 20th century acoustician Marin Barber's opinion on just intonation is that it's never been anything other than a beguiling theory, bizarre. Its devotees have mainly been philosophers and mystics. Barber insists that just intonation is not only a cumbersome tuning device, but is very limited in what it can accomplish musically. So his opinion is pretty bad. But we have also the positive opinions. The advocates of extended microtonal systems seek to restore to music the tonal diversity provided by just intonation. with its capacity for distinguishing perceptible shades of consonance and dissonance. In my opinion, this is a really beautiful thing. We will be able to hear again tonal diversity and different shades of consonance and dissonance. And I found it really fascinating. Right. In the microtonal music community, there is a clash between opposing camps of tuning bases, two viewpoints. The one favored by those microtonalists who apply just intonational procedures. The other by those composers who rely on equal temperaments as the basis for constructing their fractional scales. So it's good to know there is this difference, this tendency. I hope it's clear. Composers, they're interested in microtonality, they want an equal subdivision, right? Can be of different kind. Or the part of the microtonal composers that are interested in the just intonational procedures, which is not equal, basically. Fine. So, I would like just to mention two most common used scales that have been used in our time, the most popular ones. Maybe I'm sure you know that. The 40-tone scales, the most used, and the equal temperament 31-tone scales, which has great appeal for a surprisingly large group of my late 20th century composers. Differently, for the second one, differently to the 40-tone advocates that use these fractional pitches more as embellishments of chromaticism than as components of an integrated system. The 31 scale proponents conceive it to be an entity, right? So it's not possible to divide randomly, it's an entity. Right, we have more subdivisions that have been done, a lot of different kinds, but maybe we don't have time now. Look at that. So just a quick mention that we also had the French Spectral School, right? Which proposed a new perspective of unconventional subdivision of the octave, is also microtonal music, we can say that, based on sonographic representations and mathematical analysis of sound spectra. In this regard, Lamontian has also composed works based upon aggregates of tones related to one another as are partial tones from harmonic series. Just a couple of words about musical instruments. It is perhaps a paradox that most music using microtones has been written for realization on acoustic instruments designed with 12-tone equal temperament in mind, and for performance performed by musicians trained to play in that temperament. We have to keep in mind this factor. Right. I call pioneers, probably they have been at that time pretty much like that. So, the history of microtonal speculation during the first half of the 20th century displays 6 names of composers theorists above all others. And here we are: Julian Ferhat, Adrian Fokker, Alois Haba, Harry Barge, Ivan Wisniewski, Joseph Jasser. all these 6 names contributed with extensive studies on microtones, historical, technical, and philosophical. Now, from Reed, which is a theorist, American composer and theorist, I guess pretty much known, he proposes 4 approaches to microtonality, which I would like to show to you here. So 4 ways microtonality inflection has been brought into contemporary Western music. So microtonality has been used by composers as ornaments, right? Or component for new equal temperate system. Hummel, for example, he supported this system. A system rooted in equal temperament, reasoning that the logical extension of Arnold Schoenberg's serial technique was to further divide the 12 notes of the row into still smaller intervals. Right, and then we have the just tone international principles is another category, and aspects of rational non-conventional features elements. So this is the way microtonality has been applied in West, by composers. Well, of course, the 20th century shows as most prevalent in use of microtones a temporary inflection of the 12 chromatic features of the octaves. So it's definitely the first one, the most used. I don't know how much time we have.
Yes, the 14 minutes.
It is perhaps a paradox that most music using microtones has been written for realization on acoustic instruments designed with 12-tone equal temperament in mind and for performance by musicians trained to play in that temperament. I would like to stress this because, in my opinion, it's very important to keep in mind when we think to write a microtonal piece. Okay. Now, just a quick mention on different opinions by composers and theorists, which I found very interesting. Food for thoughts. James Tenney, the American composer, he says that he argued that the harmonic development of Western art music reached something of an impasse around 1910, and that it was only when composers began to imagine music that went beyond 12-tone equal temperament that our harmonic evolution could continue. Or Messiaen, he also mentioned in his technique of my musical language. For quartet tone music, I pause to repeat that the temperate quartet tone system extolled by Hummel and Wisniewski offers us a series of modes of limited transpositions, which continue ours. This system, comprising 24 sounds, 24 transpositions, entirely new melodies and chords, necessitates a special notation and special instruments. So it was really aware about the issue. And then Harry Cowell. As music has since its early history progressed directly up to the overtone series, this is one theory, there is a strong possibility that the next development may be to add to music the next highest overtone after the half step, which is our most complex interval. So he has also interesting opinion. Sabanev, which is the next one here, a musicologist, Russian, I guess. Apparently, it is not easy to enrich music through a purely theoretical departure. It seems obvious that the introduction of new fractional sounds must be linked to older and related melodic colors. So we start to be critic. It's not just about dividing. We need to find a relation. Yasser, is new music sufficiently convincing? He says that we are forced to admit that much time will probably elapse before there can be created new music sufficiently convincing to profoundly alter the musical psychology of mankind and thereby overshadow the grandiose musical achievement of past centuries. We have this burden. Again, in the next point, he says that he's pointing out that the purely mechanical division of the equal temperament intervals of our present system into quarter-tones or higher degrees is unjustified process, historically and acoustically pointless as well. And we have another very critical. The last one is by Pietro Blaserna, theorist, Italian. He says that he expresses the hope that there may be a new and fruitful era at hand of music in which we shall abound the temperate scale and return to the exact scale. Music founded on the temperate scale must be considered as imperfect music and far below our musical sensibility and aspirations. That it has endured and even thought beautiful only shows that our ears have been systematically falsified from infancy. So it's pretty much radical. Right. Okay, so I guess we don't have much time left. Well, of course I put it here, everybody knows. We have just a rough subdivision. In Microtone scores, just the big groups is like modifying conventional notation, as we have here, or creating new symbols to express microtones in the score. So this is the big division, the big groups, the two big tendencies. But it's we haven't achieved yet international agreement, convention on how to notate microtonal music yet. I think we haven't achieved yet. Because a lot of composers, they use their own symbols to write the same microtones, and sometimes it's a bit confusing for players, for composers as well, for theorists, and so on. So, yeah. Right. Harry Barge. Our system of conventional notation must be held partially responsible for the inelasticity of our present musical theory and for the misdirection of many notational ideas. A music system does not evolve as it does because it lends itself to being translated into notation. It evolves, basically, from the capacity of the ear and is formulated and articulated by scientific insight and creative speculation. Many contend that the 5-line stuff, which was designed for 7 notes, and now is overburdened by 12, is not really adapted to the notation of microtones as occasional embellishment of the chromatic gamut. Maybe this is also a challenge to rethink about the notation system. Open question, of course. Well, I wanted to report here just 3 examples from 3 composers, of course, well known, which they have used actually another system. So the retuning instruments is also a very well-known practice. So we don't need to notate with strange symbols. We just retune instruments in a different way, and we play the same music with the conventional notes, conventional notation, but sounds differently, of course. This is also a technique has been used largely by many composers. Okay, so now I just gathered names, but these composers specifically, they have applied specifically the 24-tone scale, right? So the 24-tone scale, so the quartet-tone scale, okay? The quartet-tone scale, because it's the most used, quartet-tone scale has been. Well, I don't know if you have time to listen to anything because.
We have in the minutes. For the questions.
Maybe just one example or two. Why? Just to give an overview. You know, composers that have been using microtones in their career. Right. I don't know if it will open. Why can I move it? I can't move my arrow here. Right, okay. Fine. So we have composers from different countries, different backgrounds, but a lot of composers, they have experimented with microtonality, they have challenged themselves with this approach. Right. Okay, so maybe we come back to that, to listen if we have got some time left. I just go to the conclusions, because there are a few concepts I wanted to express. Just to mention 2 very important music festivals, the Mikrofest, the Microtonal Music Festival in New York City, which is going on for 30 years at least in New York. Right. 2 misconceptions, which I found really interesting. A terminology commonly used for tuning system in the 19th century, it was equal temperament, right? They said, we have equal temperament. But So, but it was not equal temperament, a real equal temperament. It was well temperament or mean tone temperaments. They called them equal temperament, but the practice was something else. True mathematically precise equal temperament couldn't be tuned until 1917. So we didn't have real equal temperament until 1917. Neither Bach nor any other keyboard composers of the 18th and 19th century used equal temperament. And a second concept, key coloration. What is a key coloration? With a 12-tone equal temperament, we have achieved practicality, serviceability in all keys. That is true. But we lost the key coloration. In fact, we wouldn't have had just one with 5 minutes. We would have had 24 separate major and minor keys, each with its own relationship to itself, which means almost endless possibilities of key coloration, which we have not today. I found very interesting example by Eben Goresko, who made this presentation. He said, it's like we look at the painting, maybe a very famous painting, but in black and white. You have the shape, you have the consistency, you have the figure, but you have not the colors. So using key coloration, it means we can get back the colors that we have lost from the past. Right, so I have finished how much time?
Okay, 3 minutes.
3 minutes, and then
if you want to play it.
Maybe there's questions.
Yes. We still have time, 5 minutes for the questions. Still, if you want to play some files.
okay, so first question and then
No, files
first
and then
play.
questions.
Okay. Okay, now I'll sit here because I don't know why it doesn't work. Okay, so just very quickly, I would like to show you an excerpt of my composition. Why? Just because it's a way of using microtones, and in this case, I use microtones to describe a sphere. Right?
Which system?
I used the microtones to describe a sphere.
Yes,
geometric
but
images.
just intonation, equal division.
No, I'm not using any specific scale. I've used mathematical formulas, proportional frequencies to represent the sphere.
Okay. Good. Interesting.
Just quickly, yes, sorry. Okay, from here.
mille, thank you very much. We still have 4 minutes for some questions, if someone would like to ask Mr. Cancialosi.
Hello, thank you for the nice presentation. I would like to ask you, because you are a composer as well, which system do you prefer actually, or do you use describing your music, Microtonality? Because you mentioned some symbols, and you said that it's dependent on the composer, which symbols he or she uses.
Symbols.
Yes. For microtonal accidentals.
Yeah.
Which ones do you prefer and why?
I used to modify the conventional ones. I don't like
What are
to.
the conventional ones?
I don't know, sharps,
Yes.
flats.
Yes.
I modified them. You know, the flat, mirrored, or the sharps with one line only, or 3 lines instead of 2 for 3 quarter tones, or 1 line with a quarter tone.
Yeah, I think the quarter tones more or less are now traditional. What are you using when it's not like the quarter tone? I think that's the most difficult thing. If you have like an approximation in sense, like the quarter tone, what do you use?
I use numbers. For example, for this composition.
Do you have a score and a score?
Well, I have, but I don't think we have time. I'm a bit. Yes, I have. I mean, for example, this was a bit a challenge, but this is also another very important. Actually, it's a very good question, because the problem for composers, at least for me, because yes, beautiful ideas, nice ideas, but when applies to musicians, how can we be sure that this is a quarter tone, or is a 5th tone, or is a 3rd tone? How do I ask a violin player to play a 3rd tone? Seriously. My experience is, if you get a quarter tone, you're lucky, right? Or something in between. It's not easy to get exact pitches, so that's why also this theory applying to practice with musicians is critical. Or you must have specialized musicians in microtonal music all the time. Otherwise, it's a very practical issue, unfortunately. It is like this. But anyway, I've used numbers and conventional symbols. So, for example, for the 8th tone, the arrow up with 8, for example, and you write in the first page that this is the 8th tone. This is the most direct way.
Any more questions, please? Otherwise, during the coffee breaks, I was going to ask you also the same question about your system and the notation, and the purpose, your main idea, why you're using microtonality. What's your goal?
The main idea, because I studied Byzantine music, and I was interested in this fascinating music in Greece, and I went there. I studied with teachers, and it was really fascinating. Of course, I didn't apply Byzantine music in my music, but the idea of this kind of consonance and dissonances they have was really interesting.
Please. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ivan Cancialosi. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ferhat Cayli. I am from the Department of Music Theory at Hacettepe University in Turkey. I am a PhD candidate and I am preparing a dissertation about the features of the Ottoman Turkish music theory in the 15th century. In this presentation, I would like to introduce you a forgotten playing technique that we found in the 15th century Turkish music theory manuscripts. And I will tell you about how this technique provided us a better understanding of the historical of Ottoman music theory. This technique was used on the open string instruments such as çeng and kanun. With the help of this technique, performers were able to make instant intervallic alterations on these instruments. The kanun is a zither family instrument and it is still in use. But today it has levers to make intervallic alterations. These small levers can be raised or lowered quickly by the performer while the instrument is being played. They serve to slightly change the pitch of a particular course by modifying effective string lengths. The lever technology was implemented to kanun at the end of the 19th century. Prior to that time, the kanun was a somewhat inflexible instrument to perform on. But the players were using their fingernail of the thumb to depress on the ends of the strings to achieve on-the-fly intervallic alterations. It was a very difficult technique and it required a high level of virtuosity. The cenk was an angular open harp. There were various sizes of the cenk and it was a popular Ottoman instrument until the 17th century. Then it fell into disuse. Unfortunately, there is no original cenk survived until today, as far as we know. The last written report about this instrument dates back to 1660 from the travel books of a famous Ottoman traveler, Evliya Çelebi. He said that there were only 12 cenk players in Istanbul in his time. He said because it was a very difficult instrument to play, the music of that period. Today there are different types of harps around the world with levers and pedals, but the cenk was not one of them. This historical instrument did not have any mechanism to provide intervallic alterations. By the way, there are a couple of features which distinguish the cenk from the modern harps. The first thing is that the sound box is in the upper part of the instrument, whereas on the modern harps, the sound box is on the lower part, and also that the sound box is covered with leather, very much like traditional percussion instruments. In the last 2 decades, the instrument makers and performers began to revive the cenk with newer designs, incorporating advanced tuning mechanisms such as those found on the kanun. I want to show you a video. She is one of the few cenk players of our time. Her name is Shirin Pancaroğlu and she is a worldwide harpist. In this video, she is playing a modern prototype of the cenk, which has some levers on the lower part. Some levers. The 15th century versions of these instruments did not have any levers. We know that the kanun players were using a technique to make intervallic alterations by depressing on required strings with their fingernail. They were using this technique since the 16th century, but we found that also the Cheng players were using this technique. Furthermore, they were the first to use it. We found many writings that points to the usage of this technique on the Cheng. These writings can be traced backwards to the 14th century. However, I found very little information about the detailed technical description of this technique. For example, there is a passage from the 14th century by Meragi. He said, on the open string instruments, each string is reserved for one note. If the player wants to switch to another note, some strings need to be retuned. But if the player is a master, then he can obtain the scales by putting his finger label on the required places of the strings. This passage is one of the most detailed technical descriptions about this technique. But I found many other passages about when this technique can be used. For instance, in the Turkish music theory writings of the 15th century, there were special chapters about the tuning orderings of the Cheng. In these chapters, theoreticians described various tuning orders for different scales. They also described how to make instant modulations and transpositions on the Cheng by using this technique. It was possible to sharp a string more than a half tone with the help of fingernail. I will show you some examples from those manuscripts, but first I would like to tell you about the basic features of the Ottoman Turkish music theory around the 15th century. First of all, of course, it's a monophonic microtonal music. In the 15th century, there were two main approaches to music theory. One of them was theory-oriented and the other one was practice-oriented. Today, this theory-oriented approach is called as systematist école, and the practice-oriented approach is called as Anatolian école. The systematist approach was older, so the Anatolian école may be considered as a modern approach for that period. The systematist theoreticians were very interested in mathematical ratios of the intervals and the pitches, and they used an alphabetical music notation to represent the pitches in order. They declared a 17-tone scale system with the help of the proportions of the strings. They described the mathematical ratios of the pitches quite clearly by using this alphabetical notation. By this means, today we are able to calculate the pitches and we are able to reproduce the scales exactly as they were used at that period. This 17-tone system is actually a Pythagorean tuning based on the perfect fifths and perfect fourths, the circle of the perfect fifths. As you know, the cent values show the accurate description of the intervals. For the 12-tone equal temperament, a semitone is equal to 100 cents and a whole tone is equal to 200 cents. And here are the cent values of the 17-tone system of the 15th century. The theoreticians generated approximately 100 scales from that 17-tone system, but they chose only 12 of them as main modes, or in original terminology as 12 makams. Some of these makams were consisting of 7 notes per octave, and some of them were consisting of 8 notes per octave, and even one of them was consisting of 9 notes per octave. Thanks to the mathematical approach of the systematist theoreticians, today we know the exact scales of these 15th century makams. The systematist theoreticians described the intervals and the tone system of the 15th century in detail. But there were another group of theoreticians who adopted a different approach to music theory. This group of early theoreticians are called today as Anatolian École. Those theoreticians were not interested in mathematical ratios. Moreover, they did not use any music notation. Anatolian theoreticians used verbal definitions to describe the makams by using special names for the pitches. In the modern Turkish music theory, each pitch has a special name. But in the 15th century, the pitch naming process was just beginning. The pitch names were not standardized yet. Furthermore, Anatolian theoreticians used a very complicated system for the pitch naming. For this reason, it is quite difficult to understand their makam descriptions. Anatolian theoreticians were using tables or circles to describe the makams with pitch names. I would like to remind you that those theoreticians were using a very complicated system for pitch naming, so modern researchers thought that these descriptions only indicate the melodic progressions of these makams. For instance, they interpreted these tables like that, not as scales, but as melodic progressions. However, this explanation seems a bit meaningless as compared to our makam knowledge at present. The Anatolian theoreticians had another common feature. They gave particular importance to the cheng. They wrote special chapters about different tuning orderings of this instrument for different scales. They gave some lists regarding which modes can be played for each tuning order. But there is a contradiction here, because some of these scales were consisting of different notes from the given tuning order, or some of them had more notes than the given tuning order, so these lists were also a bit pointless. The missing piece of the puzzle was a misunderstood word, girift. Girift was the name of this technique, the pushing the strings with the fingernail. The girift is actually a word of Persian origin, and in Persian language it means to take, to catch, to grab, or capture. And in Turkish it literally means intricate or complicated. Besides all these meanings, it was actually a term for a playing technique. But in the music theory manuscripts, this word has been quite misunderstood by modern researchers. For example, there is a passage from that period about the chromatic tuning of the cheng, in the way that it covers all the microtonal intervals, 17 notes in an octave. Normally, the cheng was tuned diatonically, 7 notes in an octave. But the theoretician described this unusual chromatic tuning order, and he said, if you tune the cheng in this order, you can play all the scales. In the present case, you do not need to do girift in the original. But modern researchers translate that passage like this: you do not need to grab the strings, or even there is no need to any complex situation. The misunderstanding of this word caused many problems on the translation studies and also on the interpretation of some music theoretical issues. In fact, there are lots of evidence showing that this word was used for referring to this technique. When we realized that the girift was a technique, we understood the lists about the tuning orders and their related scales. These scales were suitable to these tuning orders by sharpening some strings with the help of this technique. We also understood that Anatolian theoreticians were not describing the melodic progressions of the makams. They were describing the scales of these makams. We understood that from the chapters about making transposition on the chenk by using girift technique. When we subdivided these chapters, we figured out that the Anatolian theoreticians were using pitch names also to imply intervals. That's why they used the same pitch names over and over again. With this finding in mind, we reconstitute the makam descriptions of the Anatolian theoreticians, and they were describing the scales. When we compared these scales with the systematist echo, we explored a new step about the evolution of the makams in the history of Ottoman Turkish music theory. This playing technique helped us to understand music theoretical issues of the past, and maybe it can contribute to the reviving process of a long-forgotten instrument. I know it's very difficult to apply this technique on a modern harp because of the higher tension of the strings, but new acoustic instruments are still being invented. I hope this technique can be useful also for ecmelodic music. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this. It's a lot of information for us, and I'm sure that we have a few questions. So please, if...
is the instrument, can you tune it in 17 divisions of the octave?
Yes, because it has approximately 24 strings.
Yes. Okay. So that's why you need the girift, or what you say.
Yes.
So you just use the strings as they are. That you
yes, but it was, I think it was just a theoretical issue. It was not practical. Because the repertoire is consists of more than one octave. I think.
Do you think?
Are people nowadays studying the chenk? Like, is it available at some universities, say in Turkey or elsewhere?
No, there is no study in universities about this instrument. There is a couple of players. I know 3 of them.
But when
one of them was American.
And they just had to teach themselves, basically.
Yes, they regard these instruments by the writings about the making instrument, the luthier definition. And they used actually, one of them was used the kanun technique on this instrument, and the other one, Cancialosi, is using the harp technique. And they are trying to make it real.
Gertrude, please.
Yeah. Now they're acquired to play the technique, and are they now sort of teaching it to other people? Because that's what Judith actually wants to know. If I want to learn that,
yes.
Where do I go to? I can't go to a university or to a music school. I just go to these specialist people.
No.
Well, only female, by the way. I saw. Is it right? Is it mostly female instrument? Is that so? Because
yes, it's mostly female instruments.
Why? And not even at the technical university in Istanbul? It's not in Istanbul at the technical university,
yes,
where Mr. Tolga
yes,
Çoglu teaches, very good friend of us. Not even there you can learn.
Actually, I don't know, but this technique is quite new. I found this recently, and even I don't know how to use it in detail where the strings can be pushed.
Yes.
I don't know.
Any more questions, please?
Just curious, is this also a vocal practice? Do you have also, is it mostly instrumental or the same kind of subdivision is also used for vocal?
Yes, it's the feature of this music. The musicians know that intervals in their ears. It's a tradition, and they know they can obtain this.
How many makams? So it's the division is 17 for both the Methodist, systematic school, and then for the Anatolian school as well, it's always 17 divisions.
Yes,
and then
until the 19th century, it's like 17.
And my question, because so for the systematic school, you can do either 7, 8, or 9 divisions, and then the Anatolian is only 7 divisions.
No, they were using more than 7 notes in an octave.
Okay, as well, because of the examples, and how many makams are there?
12 makams they choose.
But you can choose more. I mean, this
yes, there's
is
lots of scales, but they choose, they label this 12 as makam. Then, after the 17th century, and in modern Turkish music theory, we use this makam term for each mode. It's in theory, there is approximately 600 makams.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah, 600.
But today we use only 80 or 90, approximately 100 scales in use. There's lots. Not all of them were using. Some of them were just 1-2 pieces, 1-2 music.
Yes. And in the Chen, or are there any more questions I don't want to? Please.
I would be interested in the verbal descriptions of the intervals. How would they be described in the Anatolian way?
Yes, they don't describe the mathematical ratios of the intervals, but it was the same music which Systematist Ecole and Anatolian Ecole explained, the same music, and we know the division. They were used these pitch names for the scales, and there is not a mathematical explanation.
I guess
no, the question is, do they characterize the interval somehow? Do they say this is a sweet interval or this is such and such interval?
They used exactly 4 pitch names: Yega, Düga, Sega, and Çarga. Between the Yega and Düga, there is a whole tone, and Düga and Sega, there is a half tone, but more than a half tone, a microtone. And between Sega and Çarga, there is a smaller than a half tone.
And do they have another meaning, these 4 words? Do they have a meaning in the Turkish language?
It's actually a Persian language words. But today we also use this technique for pitch names. These words, Yega, Düga, and they were also names of some makams. It's complicated.
It's fascinating.
If I may elaborate on your question here about the sort of signs that they use to indicate these microtones in the Persian music. With Persian classical music, there are 2 signs which are called chori, and so one of them is a little bit more sharp and the other one is a little bit more flattened. And that's how in the Persian classical music they differentiate these microtones which are located between half tones.
Thank you.
And one question, please. So, when could you tell us again when they realized that they made this mistake in the translation of Gilift? 19th century, was it? When was it again, please?
the correction of the
Yes, when they realized that there was a mistake in the translation.
Nowadays, actually. It's
now, very good.
Yes.
Okay.
It's, from my studies, actually. Excuse me?
Sure. Discovered that.
Before my studies, a researcher described this word grid as an additional flat on the fretted instruments. He said it's not for open string instruments, but it's a term for flattened instruments, and it means an additional flat on the two notes. They described in this way, and he actually obtained the scales first. But it was obvious a term for open string instruments.
And the musician on the video playing the cheng, actually, I guess it's more practical not to use the giriff technique.
Yes.
So you manipulate first you choose your makam mode, and then you just play. And she's actually using at any moment this.
Yes, she won't. In the instrument, the prototype of the check, the vessel for just one levels for each string.
Yes, so she can.
Maybe you saw there are approximately 9 or 6 levels for each string. It's more useful for on-the-fly interval calculations.
And now just more or less your opinion. So, do you think that there are really benefits for the audience? That is really that they should come back to the giriff technique, that they use this kind of pressing? And so, what can this modification in the technique and going back to the giriff, if it can bring something specific for the audience?
Can you repeat the question?
They're using the coming back to the giriff with this manipulation with the fingernails.
With the nail plate.
Yes, the manipulation of the intervals. What is actually the biggest reason why we should have this technique back?
No, we shouldn't have to back.
Okay.
The levels are more practical.
Yes, of course, yeah. But I don't know, maybe there's some benefits that we can...
It's a quite new research, and I don't even listen how this technique sounds. Maybe it has some special effects on pitch bending.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Turkish music, the pitches are not exact points, exact frequencies. They are kind of area, and they are movable.
Yes.
And you raised this higher and vice versa. So this can be maybe this technique have more opportunities for the play real Turkish music.
Yes.
Movable pitches.
Yes. More practical.
But the levels are more easy.
Yes. Eleni?
Is it possible to change the tuning during playing, and how fast can it function?
Tuning of the strings?
Yes. Not of
technique?
Yes. The levels of the chords. Yes.
Not
you
with
can arrange
don't.
the levels in other positions so that you retune the instrument while playing.
I don't know how long it takes, but I think it's not useful when playing quite repeat passage. You sharpen the strings and then lower it back. It's quite difficult, I think, to use the retuning way. Actually, I don't know because I'm not a performer of these instruments, not change or how.
Maybe one last question, because we have plenty of time for the question time. Do you know if performers today, they are using also gut strings, or the strings they were used in the past, or they just use the modern more tension strings?
The prototype has a leather.
The material of the strings.
The strings?
Yes.
So, actually, I don't know how they produce it again in modern.
Okay.
But I think it's it's not plastic, maybe.
Nylon and metal strings.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Some people they also try to use the old strings, the gut strings. Yes.
Okay. Because of in order to obtain the real sound of the instrument, because this instrument is also a new instrument for us.
Yes.
Because it's forgotten.
Mm-hmm. Any more questions, please? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cayli.
Very pleased to be here. Thank you so much for listening. And I'm a PhD candidate in musicology and composition at the University of Florida, trying to finish in a couple of months, hopefully. And this is just an excuse to present you my own music, my own pieces. Although it might seem a little bit pretentious, I don't mean to be pretentious. It's just, I know that you're all specialists in microtonal music, so it's a good venue to get your feedback and criticism. So please feel free to give me feedback and criticism on my music. Why I chose this specific title is that I'm basically arguing for a sort of a kind of flexible approach to integrating all different sorts of microtonal possibilities that we have in the world, integrated in all sorts of musical cultures, from the dawn of the time in China and Greece to the present non-Western musical cultures, like the Turkish music and Persian music, all sorts of Oriental music, you name it, African music, gamelan, whatever, to Pythagorean tuning, mean-tone temperament, well temperament, equal temperament, all sorts of different approaches to just intonation, or the extension of equal temperament to the present composers. We have so many great composers in this room, Maestro Kuchi, Augustin, Fabian and many other of you, or George Friedrich Haas, or Manfred Steinke, Wolfgang von Schweinitz. All of them have had different approaches. But the point is that many of them have kind of stuck in one specific ideological use of one specific system. For example, Harry Partch, mentioned Harry Partch in the first presentation. He has stuck to his 43 tone to octave, 11 limit just intonation, and kept on doing the same thing again and again. Or Alois Haba or Vishnegradsky. They never went beyond using the elaborations of, as far as I know, never went beyond using the elaborations of equal temperament to 36 tone per octave. So 1/3 tones, or like the Salzburg Ichmelika, like Franz Richter for both Miller, the 72 tone to octave, where we have 1/12 tones. What I argue for and find kind of interesting in my own works, there are other composers in the world, of course, is a sort of flexible approach. We can take elements from other musical cultures, as I do in some of my music from Oriental music or music of the Andes, for example. Or we can use all sorts of approaches, just intonation, or elaborations of equal temperament, among others. So that was an introduction. What I'm going to do in the next more or less 20 minutes is playing about 10 minutes of 3 of my recent pieces, which more or less have been successful, have got quite a bit of performance in USA mostly. And I will give you a kind of theoretical introduction to the pieces, and I will play parts of them to get critique and feedback from you, basically. The very first piece that I'm going to play for you is called 10 Aphorisms for Saxophone Duo. How I came up with this idea was I was asked by 2 really fantastic saxophonists. One of them from Switzerland, Laurent Stopi, is a freelancer, saxophonist and composer, does work with microtonal music but also multimedia music quite a bit. And the other one on the right, Dr. Steve Stusek, who is the saxophone professor at the University of North Carolina in Greensboro, and they have this duo, saxophone duo, which is called Stax Duo. And they asked me to compose them a piece. I came up with the idea of 10 aphorisms. So aphorisms, why I came up with this idea, I'm not sure, because at the time I was reading aphorisms by Nietzsche and Wittgenstein and Schopenhauer, very short, scientific, philosophical, whatever statements which basically present a fact in a very precise and concise manner and go away. That's basically the idea of aphorisms. And I try to integrate the idea in my music. 10 very short pieces of more or less 30 seconds. What I did in terms of microtonality was basically just intonation. I tried to integrate up to the 13th harmonic, which basically, based on a specific fundamental, would build a just intoned or natural minor sixth in this piece. But based on the psychoacoustical phenomenon of difference tones, or difference tone harmonic. The way it works, I'm sure you're familiar with, but just as an introduction to difference tones and difference tone harmonic, in this case, we have two phenomena, two sort of difference tones, cubic difference tones and quadratic difference tones. Again, these are psychoacoustical phenomena. It means under a specific acoustical condition, no vibration, enough amplification, proper space, the psychoacoustical phenomenon would happen in the ears. In terms of quadratic difference tones, you take frequency F2 and frequency F1. For example, frequency F2 based on a C fundamental on the left system would be an F sharp, a natural F sharp, or a natural minor seventh, basically. I'm sorry, natural tritone. Natural tritone would be ratio 11 to 8, among others. And the frequency F2 would be the seventh harmonic, natural minor seventh, with the ratio 7 to 4. It's very easy. The quadratic difference tones of these two would be F2 minus F1, the higher frequency, or the lower frequency subtracted from the higher frequency. In this case, you will get 11 minus 7, the 4th harmonic, which is the C, basically. That's the quadratic difference tones of the ratio F2 and F1, or 11, 7, basically. In the case of quadratic difference tones, it's a little bit more complicated and more elaborated because we have a cascade, an array of different quadratic difference tones, which basically are the lower harmonics of a specific ratio. As an example, in the case of F2 and F1, if F2 would be the 11th harmonic, and F1 would be the 10th harmonic, the formula with which we count the cubic difference tones would be 2 multiplied F1 minus F2. In this case would be 2 multiplied 10, 20 minus 11, the 9th harmonic. And then if we do the same formula again, 2 multiplied 9 minus 10, 2 multiplied 8 minus 9, it gives us the whole lower harmonics of the ratio F2, F1, basically. So, using this system based on a D fundamental, very kind of there's no specific reason for that, I just show as a D fundamental. I came up with the tonal material for my saxophone duo. It has been performed multiple times by Steve Stusek and Laurent Stopi, and actually coincidentally recorded last week. I don't have the recordings. I have the recording, but I didn't have the time to edit that and integrate that in my PowerPoint presentation. So what I'm going to play you is a specific performance where Laurent Stoppy was not available. So Dr. Suzanne Fancher, who is a very well-known saxophonist, also a professor for saxophone at the Duke University in North Carolina, worked with Steve Susek to perform the piece at the Society of Composers and Computer Region 4 Conference at the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. The way it works in this piece, as you might see here, for example, in the case of the second aphorisms, is the soprano sax presents the ratio, the two harmonics that are chosen. And the piece is titled after that specific ratio. So the piece is titled 9-8. Because the soprano sax, based on a D fundamental, is playing with only two tones, which is the 9th harmonic and the 8th harmonic, in this case, E and D. Of course, with the microtonal deviations, I have C sharp and F sharp lowered circa 1/6 tones. Why 1/6 tones? Those are not actually the exact microtonal deviations with harmonic series, just for the sake of practicality. So I kind of rounded up the 49 cents lower 11th harmonic to 1/6 tone, also lowered the but we'll see that in other pieces. I rounded up all sorts of harmonics in the case of 13th harmonic, which is about 31 cents higher than the equal tempered minor 6. Based on the D fundamental, it would be a B flat. I round us up to 1/6 tone lower. In the case of 7th harmonic as well, which is 31 cents lower. And the tenor sax presents all sorts of different tones of this specific ratio. So what we see in tenor sax in all of these aphorisms is D quadratic difference tones, as well as the whole cascade of the cubic difference tones of that specific ratio, in this case 9-8. In soprano sax, always the two pitches presenting the ratio, and the tenor sax the difference tones. So I'm going to play you the first aphorisms, and then two more of them that are very short. As I said, the whole point is to present, in this case, some sort of sound structure, some sort of hopefully interesting sound combination, and fade away as quickly as possible. So that was the second aphorism. I arbitrarily I chose the aphorism, so there is no specific reason why I chose the second and fifth and 10. Just in the case of fifth aphorisms, which is titled 13 to 10, I have the 13th and 10th harmonic based on D fundamental in the soprano sax. And then the whole cascade of the cubic difference tones, as well as the quadratic difference tones of the tenor sax, of the harmonic series based on D fundamental in the tenor sax. You might think this is a psychoacoustical phenomenon. Sure, it's not like that. I'm not trying to basically create this psychoacoustical phenomenon. I'm using that principle as a means, as a kind of compositional method to make some sort of sound structure. So the fifth aphorisms. last aphorism, the 10th aphorism, which might be the most dissonance of all, because I'm using a very kind of a small interval between the 13th and the 12th harmonic. And of course, the soprano sax again is presenting these two pitches, the 13th and 12th harmonic based on the D fundamental, and the tenor sax, all the cascade of cubic difference tones and quadratic difference tones. Notational system, because it came up in the first presentation. As you see, I'm using a combination of microtonal signs, and like here a little bit more sharpened, and also 1/6 tone, -1/6, +1/6, or +1/4, -1/4. I also mentioned all the deviations up on the above the score, basically. The next piece that I would like to play for you, the last piece was composed in 2014, and this piece was composed before that, actually, earlier in 2014. It's performed twice. It's a woodwind quintet. It's performed by the Northwestern Woodwind Quintet in the Northwest Music Consortium, but also by Great Southern Woodwind Quintet at the University of Florida, my home school, basically. And what I'm playing for you is the Northwestern University, which is in Chicago, that recording. The way this piece works is based on detuning, a very kind of easy idea that the other presenters also mentioned. Again, based on just intonation, but another different approach to just intonation, not the difference tone harmony, but the detuning. The piece is based on a C fundamental throughout. Bassoon is, of course, presenting the fundamental tones, and all the other instruments are detuned to the 5th, 7th, 11th, and 13th harmonic. Why these four harmonics? Because they deviate significantly from equal temperament, basically. In this case, horn is tuned 31 cents lower, hoping to get the 7th harmonic. The clarinet is tuned 49 cents lower, hoping to get the 11th harmonic. And oboe is tuned 41 cents higher to get the 13th harmonic. And the flute, the 5th harmonic, which is a natural major third, 14 cents lower. Very small deviation. The piece is based on the distortion of this just tuned chord that you might hear at the beginning of the piece. This is just the beginning. I'm not going to play this part, it's rather longer, it's about 7-8 minutes. But you see the kind of a microtonal chord that we get at the beginning. It's based on the distortion of that, or sliding of that just tuned initial chord to other just tuned chord, or some sort of a strange proportions in between. So it's based on just intonation and this distortion of just intonation. It's the whole idea of the piece. I'm going to play about 2 minutes of the piece. It starts right there, but it doesn't end here. So I don't have the score after this part, in case you follow the score. It's called tuning exercise number 1, which is the first of a series of tuning exercises that I've been doing. The second one was composed for electric guitar, marimba, violin, and baritone sax, which is also performed at the Florida Contemporary Music Festival. And the third one that I finished recently for a string quartet is also performed at Boston string quartet. So I'm hoping to, in the course of the next 30, 40 years, hopefully if I keep on living, to add to these tuning exercises, presenting my argument for this presentation, basically, some sort of flexible, changing approach to microtonality, basically. And of course, these two pieces were two different sorts of approach to just intonation, whereas the next piece, which is a solo guitar piece I composed for Tolgahan Çorlu, which I fortunately met 2 years ago here in this conference, so I should thank again Augustin and Tolgahan commissioned me the piece, which I finished a while after that, and about half a year ago he recorded the piece, which is for his specific microtonal guitar. Many of you are familiar with Tolgahan's work. It's just amazing how he kind of developed this microtonal guitar where all the wounds are flexible and you can play all sorts of tunings and all sorts of intonational practices and tuning systems on that, in case you don't know his work. Specifically because Tolgahan knew that I have Persian background, wanted me to integrate ideas from Persian music, which is a kind of microtonal musical culture. So did I, basically. And I came up with the idea of using one of the most important daskas. It's kind of hard to define what is daska in the Persian classical music, which is, it has a really intricate system on its own, very different to Western music. But daska is essentially a collection of various small pieces called gushe. Each of these pieces are in different modes, and then there are similar gushes in different daskas that make it possible to modulate between daskas. There is a wonderful book chapter on the Persian classical music in German in the book Mikrotone 1001, where you can read and get more impression. It's hard to define for me. I'm not by any means a specialist in the Persian classical music. I just know that because I was born in that country, although I lived mostly in Germany and then in the US. But what I did is not based on just intonation in this case. It's based on a specific scale, if you like, where we have two microtonal deviations. As you're seeing this with this specific signs, we have lowered D and lowered A. You might wonder how much lowered in the Persian classical music. People traditionally think they are quartertones, but they are not quartertones. They are mostly something between 3 quartertones and whole tones, so about 1/6 tone lower and higher. While most kind of Persian, just like Turkish music instruments, most of them have flexible frets. I'm sorry, stay away from it. They have flexible frets, so the frets can be moved. So in different dasgahs, in different louis. Touch it again. That would make it.
To make noise, but maybe it stops. It's not so very hard.
Let me mute that first then.
Yes, and maybe we can do it again. Maybe this is no problem with this microphone. I will check.
I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah.
Great.
So they have flexible frets, the Persian instruments, string instruments specifically. So in different dasgahs, in different bushes, different modes, there are very small microtonal deviations, which are mostly not calculated based on Western systems, as far as I know, of course. Having said that, in the whole piece, which is composed for Togahan's microtonal guitar, 8-string microtonal guitar, I have two sorts of approaches. The first one is detuning the two instruments, so detuning the D string and detuning the A string. Again, for the sake of practicality, to quartertone lower, which is not actually the exact microtonal deviations in the Persian classical music, just for the sake of practicality. And then I have of course, the displacement of the frets. All the A's and all the D's on all guitar strings are moved lower about a quartertone. And that's how this piece is structured. At the same time, I use all different sorts of motivic kind of phrasing structure from Persian classical music in these 3 pieces. This is basically a triptych. A triptych, 3 small pieces, all of them based on different bushes from dasgah, chahargah. That's why it's called se chahargah, because se in Persian means 3, like a triptych, 3 pieces, and chahar means 4. So chahargah means 4 gah. So it's just this funny name, se chahargah. That's just ein Spaß, just a spiel for me, basically. What I'm going to play here is the second and third movement of this piece, for the sake of the time. Recorded by Togahan, and the video of that is put on YouTube. It's also on my website, in Togahan's own page, Togahan Show. So please, if you're interested, please see that. You know that he's just amazing. So this is the kind of short second and third movement. The second movement has a lot of impression from the kind of melodic or motivic movements or circulation in kind of faster pieces in Persian music. And the third movement, vice versa, based on the very slow gushes or slow pieces in the Persian music, but in a kind of harmonic way. I don't have any microtonal sign, just like the woodwind quintet. In the woodwind quintet, it was D-tuned. In this case, we have D-tuning plus the displacement of fret. So I don't need any microtonal sign throughout the piece. All the D and A's in this piece are 50 cents lower, so 1 baritone lower, and in this piece as well. see this piece, this very last movement asks for the player to perform that very dramatic, pessimistic, and struggling, and there are other signs in the second page that ask for a very dark, kind of a bitter environment. And then when I played that for the first time, Tolga Han's recording in our composition studio at the University of Florida, one of my composition instructors there, Paul Richards, made the joke, because it was composed about 8 months ago, and said, as if you could see that Donald Trump is coming and Brexit will happen in the UK, so that's why. Anyway, that was his joke. Thank you so much.
Mr. Navid Bargrizan, and we have a few minutes for some questions, so I'm sure we have a few. Please.
How do you arrange the beat tuning?
How do I do the
beat tuning? Yes. Do you use convertura for the strings from the beginning, and how do you do it for the woodwinds, actually?
Well, I just write the beat tuning, and the instrumentalists have their tuners. It's very easy for them to send the deviation and tune that. They see that they tune and say, oh, 14 cents lower. That's how it works. It's so easy.
You make it before the piece. You don't want it to be made with fingerings or with lip pressure.
Not in this case.
Okay.
So I have other pieces. I have, for example, a duo for flute and piano. And their flute plays it's based on quarter tone scale and 1/6 tone scale. So flute has to have different sorts of fingerings, but also working with the mouthpiece and lips and stuff like that to be able to perform that. It's actually right now, if flutist is working on that, I have to provide all sorts of fingerings which I develop in cooperation with the flutist. In the case of saxophone piece, the 10 aphorism for saxophone duo, those 2 or 3 saxophonists, they are so well versed in playing microtonal music and all sorts of new music, so they didn't need any sort of fingerings. By me saying 1/6 tone lower, one quarter tone higher, they can do everything. And actually, when I composed the piece for them, I was kind of not having composed any microtonal music for saxophone before that. I was kind of unsure if it would work on throughout the piece. But when we rehearsed that, they said it works perfectly. So it's easy for us. So I didn't really somehow work on the fingerings for that piece. But detuning, in the case of Tolga Han, it's a microtonal guitar. It's all about moving the fret. So he's the most knowledgeable person how to tune his instruments. In the case of detuning, all musicians right now with tuners do that very easily, basically. Of course. Yes.
Have you gotten feedback from any musicians, or what does the majority of musicians prefer, preemptive detuning or, so to say, real-time microtonal playing?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how to answer that. I haven't heard anything specific from any performance. These 3 specific pieces, or there are a few other chamber music, because I've had the opportunity to get my chamber pieces performed. I've been composing a lot of chamber music. They've been okay with how the way I structured that. It's just about this, cooperation between the performers and the composer to see how they feel comfortable. In the case of the tuning exercise number 1 for woodwind quintet, I remember that my oboist, who was a young kind of a bachelor or master student at the University of Florida, the first time we were rehearsing that, he said, "Oh, I can't tune my oboe 41 cents higher. For oboist, maybe it's not easy to do. It seems kind of impossible." But when he started tuning that, it was possible to tune the oboe 41 cents lower, about a quarter tone, or between a quarter tone and 1/6 tone higher. So it depends on the performer. If they are well versed in new music, in microtonal music, they almost can do anything, and they feel free. Some people are kind of really pedantic and they want something specific to be done. Some are flexible. I think there is no specific answer to that. Maybe Augustin can answer that because he's composer and performer at the same time. I don't know.
Yes, I mean it depends also for which instrument you're writing and about the experience of the performer. Yes.
I think there is no single answer to that. It really depends on the situation.
Yeah, and also in your guitar piece, because of course it's completely different.
Yes.
Using a polyphonic instrument like using Tolga's guitar with 8 strings. I mean, actually, what you did, you detuned these 2 strings, the 5th and the 4th,
right.
And then actually the frets were 12 divisions, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
I didn't have any extra frets. I just moved all the other. So on the D and A string, the 4th and 5th string, nothing was moved. They were just detuned.
Yes.
On all the other string, all the D and A frets were moved.
Ah, always.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Throughout the whole piece. I have the video. I can play the video.
Ah, okay. Yes.
And it's
Okay.
clear in the
Because, for example, for Eleni, I'm a guitar player myself, so it's very easy first to detune. I mean, you can see the picture. So the 4th, even when your fundamental note is G, so the biggest strings, the 8th, 7th, and 6th, those are D sharp, and E normal. And then actually there are 2 detunings, so that's the 5th and the 4th. And then on top of this, you can see that the movable frets, they adjust every A and every D, they adjust to this system.
I actually left it to Poland, but now on this picture, I just noticed after you asked the question that he put an extra fret here, but here you move the fret, then you put an extra fret. So it depends on how he does that. But he has all these quarters higher and lower on all D and A's, on all the on string 1, 2, 3, and 5, and 6. Basically.
And for example, for composers here, I mean, what would be the best decision? I mean, of course, you're very deliberate with your microtonal plan for every piece. And for example, being a composer, why should I detune the whole string, or instead of just manipulating the frets? For example, so from the 5th and 4th, if you allow me to say this,
please.
You can also get the harmonics. Otherwise, just manipulating the frets is completely different. And one thing I do myself very much is because of the resonance. Because if you just keep tonal tuning on the open strings, it's going to make a huge difference. Because of the sympathy of the strings, it's going to make it, it's going to construct a sonority that you might not want in your sonority, in the sonority of the composition. Any more questions, please? Please.
How was the difference between the quadratic and the cubic difference tones? Was it like the quadratic ones being something like 13/8, whereas an octave reduced harmonic, and the cubic being something like 13/10, where you had to use a second harmonic?
I can explain that if I wasn't clear enough one more time. So quadratic difference tones is one tone on the left side. The QDT stands for quadratic difference tones. But the cubic difference tones are a whole cascade of the tones, basically. How we calculate the quadratic difference tones? It's a very simple formula. The frequency of F2 minus frequency of F1. So frequency F2, 11 minus frequency, not the frequency number, I mean the harmonic number. You can of course do the frequency, but then you have to turn the frequency to number of harmonics. The 11th harmonic minus the 7th harmonic gives the 4th harmonic. So you take, let's say, if you take the 13th and 12th harmonic, the quadratic difference tones would be the fundamental tone. 13 minus 12 is 1. Or if you take 14 and 10, let's say, The quadratic difference is again the same note, which is the fourth. So it's a very simple formula, F2 minus F1. The higher frequency minus the lower frequency, basically.
So is the number, or like how, is it arithmetic thing? Because, for instance, one way that you could do the 11th minus the 7th would be like the 11/7 ratio, for example. Is that different from here, or is this just making like the number which the harmonic is?
The number of the harmonics, yeah. That's why we use this system of number of the harmonics as ratios, because it makes it easier to subtract or to add frequencies. In that case, that's a little bit different. We can do that, we can do it with the frequency numbers, of course. But when we have the harmonic numbers, it's very easy to do in the case of subtracting and adding, basically. Quadratic difference tones, we have the formula 2, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly in English, 2 multiply F1 minus F2.
Okay.
Is it correct in native English speakers? Yeah. So 2 multiply F1 minus F2. 2 multiply F1, 2 multiply 10, 20, minus 11 gives the 9th harmonic. Then if we keep on doing the same formula, 2 multiply 9, 18, minus 10, the 8th harmonic. 2 multiply 8, 16, minus 9, 7th harmonic. So it gives the whole undertones, basically, the whole lower harmonics of this specific ratio. If you take the 17 and 18 harmonic based on C fundamental, the whole cascade would be, the whole lower undertones would be the cubic difference tones. Again, this is not a physical phenomenon, this is not an acoustical phenomenon, it's a psychoacoustical phenomenon which under, as I said, with no vibration, maybe on organ I tend to hear the different tones. It depends on the acoustical space, vibration, and usually when we have kind of two tones, basically, or sinus tones, we did sinus tones. With the electronic, with the sinus tones, we take super collider or whatever and produce 2 sinus tones. You hear the beating. The beating that you hear is the lower quadratic difference tones in this case. So I'm kind of using this psychoacoustical phenomenon as a way to compose microtonal music. It's not like it's a physical phenomenon. So my music, it's not in my piece in 10 aphorisms. I don't intend to for the listeners to necessarily hear the different tones. I want them to hear a kind of sound, a structure which sounds kind of in a way out of tune or interesting based on this phenomenon, basically. So the formulas are easy. You can take any fundamental and the whole harmonic series based on that. The formula F2 minus F1 for quadratic difference tones, and then formula 2 multiply F1 minus F2 for the cubic difference tones. And there are a bunch of writings, texts on the acoustics and psychoacoustics where you can find this formula. So it's not kind of a genius thing that I came up with. It's all over the place.
Maybe one last question, otherwise at lunchtime we can keep asking. Yes?
The detuning example of the woodwinds is that, as the woodwind and brass instruments, they have a lot of intonation with the mouth, so it's not mechanical. When you have a certain tone-hole combination, it's not that the sound comes out. So, would you say there's a strong surprise element to that piece when it's played? Is it different every time, or is there a lot of coordination that needs to go on because the players play by ear in a certain sense?
Well, that's a really good question, but very hard to answer. I mean, I have 2 recordings of this piece, and it's a piece that, because of its kind of rhythmical intricacies, needs to be conducted. So I conducted the first performance of that. Then at Northwestern University, which was the performance that I played, which unfortunately not really well recording. I hear at so many places I hear similar chords and similar sound structures. I kind of like those accidentally emerging tones or impurities or dirt that might happen based on the ensemble and performer that you're using. So I kind of integrate that element of chance in the performance, hoping that the performers are well versed enough to intone that music. Having said that, my knowledge about wind instruments is I'm not a wind instrument player. I've never played the wind instruments. It's just based on listening and analyzing and reading orchestration books or whatever, as many composers do. So, wind player who has experience in microtonal music could answer that better. But I kind of count on the element of chance and dirt and impurity, and I kind of like it. So I think it's pointless to go to some sort of electronic software and make the pure just in tone structures, because it doesn't leave. It's not about the musical interactions. I do compose electronic music, but not necessarily just in tone, like chords after chords. But then, for example, Ben Johnston, for example, starts composing just in tone string quartet, integrating up to the 31st harmonic for a string quartet. And then Kepler string quartet in the US spent 14 years playing and recording his string quartets in 3 CDs, which came out last year. The last one came out last year. They spent 14 years only and solely playing Ben Johnston just in tone string quartets, learning how to play those. In one of the string quartets, in the 7th string quartets, there are 172 tone per octave, all based on calculations in the harmonic scale, just intonation. How to intone those tones, it brings that to life, basically. It makes it kind of human, and that's very interesting. So
it's easy on woodwinds, these divisions. In strings, it depends also for which instruments you are writing. So sometimes, if you think about microtones for wind instruments, and then you try to import them to string. I mean, string is completely different. So
of course, much easier because it's just about.
It wouldn't be so long for a woodwind.
Yeah, it is definitely much harder to write for the wind instruments. The players that play my woodwind quintet both times, they were students. They were not professional, like microtonal or contemporary music performers. But they learned the piece, and specifically the first one, because I worked with them myself, they kind of got into the idea of the piece and was interested to hear these, again, untuned, detuned sounds. The second ones also performed that very well at Northwestern, which is one of the best kind of performing colleges in USA. But I wasn't there to see if they liked that. They were hired to play the piece, basically. Maybe they hated that, I don't know. But they did a great job. So it's kind of hard to say. It's just about these interactions, and I try to be very flexible with the performance and the problems that might occur while playing.
Okay, thank you very much.